Welcome to the Wednesday, August 14th, 2024, Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. And we're going to set the tax levy this evening. All right, Dusty, you want to call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Apicello. Here. Eric Arnold.
Here.
Jennifer Harrington Wilson. Here. Dan Jasnow.
Excused.
Peter Lesser.
Here.
Ken Schott.
Excused.
Sarah Tormey.
Here. Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, we have accept agenda changes. Do I have any recommended changes to this evening's agenda? Okay. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Okay, next up, we have board president's remarks. I'm going to be very brief. I know the district is preparing for back to school, both here in this building for our pre-K to 8 and at our high schools. Dan and I have been invited to attend the Breakfast on Professional Learning Day. If there's any thoughts you want us to include when we speak to the faculty, just email them to me directly and we'll write up a nice little speech to welcome everyone back. Our new members, we're convening this out together. Thank you so much if you've attended your training or scheduled it. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions after that, please continue to reach out. I greatly appreciate your time on that. That's all I've got. I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, community members, Board of Education. I'll be brief as well, Sarah. No one's here, it's August, and I think we all want to get home at some point. But I do have some very important information to share with the community. First, for my superintendent's report, I want to let everybody know that we will have a public hearing on our both our safety plan and our code of conduct. The safety plan we have to do yearly. Every year, the district has to adopt a district-wide safety plan. It has to be advertised for 30 days for public comment. Then there's a public hearing on it. And then if there are no issues with it, we adopt it. And by law, every district has to have a district-wide safety plan. The code of conduct, the only time we have to have a public hearing on a code of conduct is anytime we change something in that code of conduct. There is a discussion item. We will have a board discussion item on cell phones. And we are looking to adapt our cell phone usage in our school. So I just want to give everybody a heads up about that. More to come on that information. The great part is we had such a successful Summer Scholars program. 40 kids enrolled, almost average attendance in the 30s. It was fantastic. Our ESY program, our extended school year program, is integrated into that. It was an extremely successful program. I witnessed much of it. I do want to take the opportunity to thank Mrs. Pitts, Mrs. Stevenson, Mrs. Lockhan, Mrs. Haley for their outstanding work as summer scholars and ESY teachers, and for Mr. Cepeda, Ms. Mosier, and Mrs. Clark for all of their support of that program. The district should be very proud of their summer scholars program. We're very proud of our teachers, and needless to say, our kids are excellent. One thing I want to mention of it that is unique to this program. Our youngest learners, our pre-K students, work with our oldest learners in all of the activities. Our students with disabilities are fully integrated into this. It is a remarkable feat to have kids at such varying age levels work together on projects together, such as developing a volcano and working together and modeling, the older kids model for the younger kids. It is something that I hope to talk more about with the board, do a little presentation of what is our Summer Scholars Program, and maybe bring some of our students in to talk about their experience. So I want to thank the board and the community for supporting them. Lastly, I'm just going to follow up with my last superintendent's report. I talked about a change in our leadership. Mr. Yap, as you know, our Director of Innovation and Learning, is now in Elmsford. We wish him well. I just spoke to him the other day. He does miss us, but he's doing great work down there. We do have a solution for this year. Some of it is on the board agenda for the board's consideration. One is we have, through Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, secured a retired administrator Alice Cronin, who is a former Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, also Assistant Superintendent for HR, so has a varied background. Also in Katona, previous to that, she was both an elementary and a middle school principal. She has an incredible amount of experience, brings that wealth to this district. And we already started meeting today to talk with her about how she can help us, not only for this year, but give us some direction of where we want to go in the future. So we're going to welcome her, and you'll hear more about her in the months to come. I'm sure she'll be at a presentation at some point to the board, meeting our faculty and meeting our families soon. The other thing is, part of Mr. Yap's role was technology. We worked long and hard to kind of find a solution to this, and we've come up with a recommendation this evening to contract with Actor Services. They offer a full array of not only infrastructure, technology services, network, LAN, but also they can support our Chief Informational Officer services, our Data Privacy Officer services. Those are critical roles in a district, and they can do that. They also have a lot of experience, and I spoke personally to assistant superintendents who supervise this in Pleasantville and Chappaqua. They do remarkable work down there, and they're highly regarded. So I'm very confident that they're going to be able to support us this year as we start to chart our future. A couple important dates. Just for the community to know, we expect that our bus schedules will be posted to Parent Portal on Friday, August 23rd. Wednesday, August 28th is a professional learning day, so that is staff only. So I know students want to run back in the building. We'd love to see you, but you're going to have to wait till September 3rd, which is our first day of school. And also August 29th is our second professional learning day. And that concludes my superintendent's report. Any questions?
A couple just clarifying comments on the transition for the director of technology. I think we worked very hard to keep this under the budget line as well. That's important to note that with the combination, right?
Yes.
Of this consulting director who's retired, and therefore is eligible for a full-time position.
Correct.
And the contract will bring us under what we had budgeted for these two.
Well under what we budgeted for the remaining of the year for the previous employee.
Anyone else have any other?
I would just like to comment that I've had the pleasure of working with Mrs. Cronin, and I'm very excited to see that she'll be here. I think she's a really nice match for the district. And also, I do work with Acture on some projects, and they're an amazing company, and I think that I know that they're very excited to be working with us. So thank you for your work in finding that and keeping us on the budget.
All right, thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and move on to board discussions. First on here, I put a discussion of the summer board retreat. Summer is a very misleading word in this. We're going to call it fall, really, unless you really think it's going to be really warm in September. So the date I'd like to look at is perhaps Wednesday, September 25th. Saturdays, I know I've looked at a lot of travel schedules, as we have 2 board members away right now. That is another Wednesday. If we could add maybe a 2-hour, maybe 3-hour retreat that is not on the same night as another meeting, where we could set board goals, and then if there's anything else that the board feels we should address at that time. I'm specifically looking at our new members. If there's things you really want to hear from, we can have council come and present, anything of that nature. This should give you some time to settle in, maybe go to the training. If there's any aspects there that you really want to address. So let me know on that date if it works for everybody. Let me know afterwards. That's sort of what I was thinking in terms of getting a little retreat in. It also gives Greg some time, and he's already been working on his goals and has a really nice presentation. We don't have to do anything as fancy as board goals. This is really fancy.
What hours will you think?
Let's say you start at 7, like a regular meeting, but it'll be in retreat. We can
So-
start a little
so I'll be
earlier.
honest, like 10 o'clock to 7 to 10 is a little late.
It's a little late, okay.
Um,
We could start earlier if people are available from work, or we could do 2 hours, and see what we need for this. really, I'm thinking more of, unless there's other topics, we really need to dive into a goal session on this retreat.
I also thought there was, NISBA had an interesting article, I forgot to bring it tonight, of 7 things that all boards should consider. I thought that might be a good conversation starter for us. I'll send an email, left in my office.
That would be great. Thank you. At least that's what preclude us from having other retreats throughout the year. If there's other topics we feel we need to dive into in a retreat session, or if we ever wish to meet the council, they will make us. Okay, I will email that data out to the other members as well. Now we come to a discussion on student cell phone use. I'm going to begin by going to Greg, who's going to start with the administration's recommendation. And then we'll turn to board thought and how this might possibly impact policy changes that may need to go to policy committee following this discussion. So, Greg, over to you.
Thank you. The good news is that Garrison is not the only school district that is looking at cell phone usage in school. The governor, as many know, has talked about a cell phone ban or something like that in schools, or really having districts look at it. I will tell you my personal opinion on cell phones in schools has changed over time. Just had, when we didn't have technology for all students, it gave students a tool that we could leverage for an instructional tool. In Garrison right now, every student has access to a Chromebook. And one of the things that we're finding is, number one, is that the cell phones become a distraction to instruction. And the research is pretty clear on that some kids use it for good, and some kids are distracted by it. The other thing is that use of social media during school time, kids get into trouble using social media. There's good points of social media, and there's definitely things, particularly in middle school, where the use of social media can cause issues in school. I would be remiss if I thought taking cell phones out of school would stop all inappropriate use of social media. That's not going to happen, but we would know that it wouldn't happen during the school day. So what we are recommending is that during the working hours of school, 8:30 to 3:15, that we don't have cell phones in use. Students can bring them to school. We know that they're a communication tool for some families. We know that some students have, not a 5-minute bus ride, they may have a 20 or 30-minute bus ride, and they may try to get some work done on it, or they may listen to some music on it. That's important. But what we're recommending is that cell phones are in lockers, and if there's not a locker available, we identify a place. They're either off or in silent mode, and they don't come back out until dismissal time. Now, we know some families may have some concerns about how to get a hold of their child in case of an emergency. We would recommend strongly that they call the main office. We can have a student come down and speak to the student, even if it's a private, we can find a private location. Or if there's just a message we need to get to the student, because it's timely, we can get that message to the student. The use of cell phones in schools with one-to-one computing seems to be less and less of an instructional tool that we can leverage, less and less of an issue of a budgetary issue, because every student in Garrison has access to the device. So that is our recommendation. We would like to update our code of conduct to include that, so the students and the families know what the expected use of cell phones.
Go ahead and open it up to any board member thoughts or comments. Anyone jump in? Jeff?
So, I think we also need to clearly define when a student can have a cell phone. In the instance of a student being diabetic and counting on it to give them alerts for their Dexcom. And I think whatever we do, we should make sure that we make those decisions as part of the policy. I mean, there'll always be exceptions, but I think we should outline those exceptions that we expect to come.
Sure.
And it also makes me wonder, what is the cell phone policy for staff?
Those are great questions. I would say on the first one, if a student had a Dexcom, they would have an individualized healthcare plan. And in it would spell out the use of their cell phone to monitor that, particularly for older students. We certainly aren't at policy yet. This is just our practice. The board can think about this. I think it's going to get a lot bigger when we talk about other devices that may may fall in the kind of cellular connectivity aspect. But clearly, if there's a medical exception, absolutely. If there's an accommodation exception for let's say a student who is learning English for the first time and they're using Google Translate, we can do either a 504 or some sort of E&L plan that we can specify the exceptions in individualized plans. So we can always have the leverage, Jen, to do.
And I love the idea of there having to be a plan. And
Yes.
it's not just a letter from someone saying, we need to have it. And what about the staff?
You know, we didn't touch the staff, to be quite honest with you. I think that's probably a different discussion. We all have, there may be reasons. I think that's also a discussion that we have to have with the GPA and their thoughts on it. And really, it could be working condition issues too.
It's modeling the behavior for students.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about, if we're not expecting kids to be on cell phones, maybe yours shouldn't be out. Not to say our staff does that, but, we should have our phones away too. And that's harder for us as adults because we're connected to it. Like we leave our house, we don't have our cell phone. All of a sudden, you're like having a little bit of an anxiety attack. I know I do. So I think that's something we have to work with the staff on. I don't think it would be an expectation right now for staff to not have their phones on them, but I do think we have to work with them and kind of feel this sort of new expectation for student conduct out with them.
And what about other devices like Fitbits or Apple Watches, those kind of things? I know they can be distractions for some kids.
Peter, I think that is a great question. I thought about it too, and I think that's one of the evolving things that we're going to have to look at. It's really easy to enforce not having a cell phone out, but I'm wearing a smartwatch. It may be the only one I have. I need to tell time. I think we have to look at it. The nice part is our acceptable use policy does talk about the appropriate use of electronics during the school day. So someone utilizing a Apple Watch or Fitbit or whatever device they have inappropriate, we can apply the acceptable use policy, which is in our code of conduct as well. And they would be subject to the code of conduct that way. So we do have avenues to kind of address those things, but I think it'd be hard to enforce banning smartwatches at this point. I think cell phones is a good first step.
Just a couple random thoughts here. Hopefully, because I feel like these well. First is, does the policy need to set a distinction between smartphones and just say, or are we just talking everything? Because I think some people might ask that question, not because I feel the same way about both of them, but I just don't know if the policy articulates that clearly. So that's.
So kind of code of conduct just says cell phones, and that would cover a flip phone or a smartphone.
Okay.
In terms of policy, that's something that the board can discuss about if we're going to adopt a policy that spells out those things. That's, I think that's something we can discuss. I think we have to feel it out for the year, see how it goes and figure out kind of where are the loopholes and where are we too stringent here and not stringent there. We'll have to look at it.
So to that point, in filling it out, one thing I think we should just be mindful of is the bus, because if we are saying that, it's no cell phones between 8:15 or 8:30 and 3:15, whatever it was, right? That creates the possibility for the bus to become a sort of cell phone free-for-all. Now, I don't know how we police that, but I think it's just something that we need to think about or keep a watchful eye on, because as you just said, leave the house without your phone, that anxiety builds, right? And so if I'm a teenager in middle school, some would argue I probably still am, but is that the knowing that I can't have the device between these specific hours will make me want to cram the use into those hours where I know it. So that's just my concern. It's something I think we just need to be mindful of, but I don't know that we need to address it in policy.
I think we should also, on that note, we would struggle to control it, given that we do not have monitoring on our buses, and that's not included in our league. So it would be a hard thing to police necessarily.
I think education is kind of where we need to go to educate, your digital footprint and what you leave online and if you're gonna use a cell phone on the bus, like what's appropriate use. And I think we'll have to, if it becomes an issue, as you said, Sarah, we can't really police that. They can use them now. Will they binge because we deny them all day? Maybe. And then we'll have to look at it from an educational standpoint. How do we instruct our kids in a positive way about the appropriate use of cell phones?
Can you speak to how the current code of conduct, or the one we wish to adopt at a public hearing, addresses acceptable use for, things that might happen on social media outside of school or impact school, and where that line is? Because I think that's something that parents would need communicated to them as well, so they fully understand, because they're interlinked now.
Yeah. So anytime a student, even if they're outside of school on the weekends, they use social media and they engage in things that have a nexus back to school, meaning that they make a comment about somebody, a student, another student as an example, on a social media platform, whether it be, Snapchat or Insta, and the kid comes in upset and goes to a counselor and talks about it and shows the post. Now there's a nexus in school. Now we can apply the code of conduct because they spoke about another student, they made these comments, even though it was off hours, off grounds. Those are things that have a nexus. So unfortunately in schools these days, those things do begin. The interconnectivity between students and the relationship between they spend 7 hours a day here is very infrequent that these things don't spill back into schools. And the code of conduct does allow us, including the acceptable use policy, to, apply the code of conduct and if necessary, disciplinary action.
I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, because I think there's a court case where, in Pennsylvania, that went to the Supreme Court, where a girl made a bunch of.
Cheerleader.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandy Levy, it's in the textbook that I work on. So, and the court, they sided with her. So this, again, we should be really clear about where the First Amendment.
Yeah, there's commissioner reviews, there's case law in New York that says there is a nexus, and DASA says we have to investigate, right? So you've got the Dignity for All School Act in New York State that says that if someone is subjected to, harassment, the school has an obligation to investigate and react to it. So you may have that Pennsylvania Supreme case there, and it's really case specific on what happened there, but we have a competing New York State DASA regulation that says these things happen and you know about it, school district, you have a responsibility to investigate it and react to it and make sure that student who is the victim of that is safe. So yeah, I think it's all murky water and choppy water, but we have competing issues. If we can handle it in a progressive, sort of restorative way, we will, but we also want to make sure that if any student is a victim of cyberbullying, for lack of a better term, that they feel this is a safe place and the adults are here to support them.
In that specific case, that one is really interesting. I think it came down, if I remember correctly, it came down to the issue they couldn't ban her from a sports team as a repercussion for saying something bad about the sports team.
But she didn't make it onto the varsity, and so she went on this tirade on Snapchat.
And she still then.
And she got suspended.
Yes, but she had the option still to compete. The suspension, I believe, was held, but she had the option to compete on JV with the other team if she wanted to. They couldn't ban her from the activity, but they could impose the suspension or something like that. So it's an interesting thing to look at, where the line is.
It's evolving case law.
Yeah, she didn't do harm to another student. She was just talking.
Right.
So are you recommending a procedure for now, not a policy?
Yeah, policy would be the policy committee. What I'm recommending is a change to the code of conduct, which is the expectations for students. And then the board can, if they so please, to review it and see if the policy needs to be altered in any way and then ultimately adopted to take a specific stance on cell phone use with students And it could expand to staff too, if that's so, yeah, as you said earlier. We're not recommending a policy change now, we're recommending a change to the code of conduct and students.
Can I ask two questions? Like, do our lockers lock?
Good question, Jill. Do they
Yeah.
lock?
I mean, you have to put a lock on them if they aren't capable of locking. Yes.
Does anyone lock their lockers? And I'm only asking because parents may say, no, you can't keep your cell phone in a locker. Not locked because what if? So I'm just thinking, is there another way we can hold the phones that would ease people's concern for phones?
If they're in a backpack and nobody sees them all day.
I'm just saying, they want to make the jobs easier for the staff and
Yes.
faculty, because I think, so last year, our code of conduct, especially in case you two didn't know, was that you can't use cell phones except for lunch and recess, and otherwise they have to be locked up or put away. So that did not happen, even in the classrooms and even in the hallways, and, right, and they were used a lot, and I think it's because it's very hard for, faculty and staff to manage such a rampant device that's in everyone's pocket, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a minor change, it's a good one, right? It's moving in the direction that most schools are going. But it's such a minor change, I don't know how we're actually then hoping our faculty and staff really enforce it anymore. Because it's kind of what it was last year. And so I think we're in the right direction, but maybe we need to consider and get staff input during the superintendent's conference day, PL day, but like I mean, when they go to their lockers, how do you really, if they're in the backpacks and the lockers, and everyone, my daughter, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom again, and again, and again.
So I've seen where they put up the shoe holders.
Right, we talked about that last
And
year.
I think that's what they did at the school.
But then one faculty member, I don't know who it will be, is in charge of all of those. The day, or do they change them every class period, every time they move? That's very
Changing.
disruptive.
My understanding of it from Allison, I can tell you that we do have it, so on our superintendent's conference, speak with our staff about this policy, and we'll talk about the logistics. I do think parents should, kids should, for at least in middle school, lock their lockers, just in case,
I
right?
think that
For
that
not
might be
just,
something, yeah.
their AirPods and all of the other things that they may be bringing, and that may not just be their cell phone, it may be their calculator,
Yeah.
that they need for math class, and someone forgot their calculator, and they're searching through lockers to go find a calculator. So I don't think it's a bad idea, just in general, to lock your stuff, and we can talk to our students about that. With respect to, we will have to work with the staff on what's the best way to enforce it. Yes, there will always be the student that will say, I have to go to the bathroom, and try to sneak to the locker. But if it's in their locker as opposed to, well, my next period's lunch, and I can go to lunch, and I can use it at lunch. I think there was a little ambiguity, my understanding from some of the staff I talked to and speaking to Allison. This will be very clear. They're off, they're not out at any point in the day, it's one step. And, yes, there'll be some bumps in the road, we'll figure it out.
What is the, repercussion, I think? I think that's something that wasn't clearly communicated last year too, of yes, it's off, but if there's no consequence for having your phone all day, then is there really any reason not to do it? Because it's just a teacher telling you to put your phone away, and you say, okay, I'm putting the phone back.
The proposed, that's up for public hearing, does say that you're subject to, I forget what section of the code of conduct, which talks about the discipline section of the code of conduct. So it's progressive discipline, I'm sure first one's warning, and then it actually says into the language of cell phone, we'll talk about it in the revised policy, that thank you, you can lose your rights if multiple violations of bringing a cell phone to school period. So it spells it out that the ultimate thing could be, you don't have a right to bring a cell phone to school.
And we do have the right to confiscate them and hold them for the day.
Correct.
We can't, teachers can't unlock them, they can't
Can't
look
look
through
at
them, but we can hold them. That's it.
I mean, I heard that there are some, I think it was in one of those articles that was going around, the Atlantic one, the New York Times one, about that company Yonder, where they have a pouch, basically, that they're all kept in a certain place in the school, and kids at the beginning of the day just put them in there, they're all secure, in in one area, and they pick them up on the way out. Again, that causes other challenges, but like, there are things that if it's still not really working, that might be.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, I would say if we were in a school of 3,000 kids, I could see that being a challenge, right? But we're mostly talking about middle school, right, which is some odd, right? So that doesn't create, I don't think, a massive queue to either, put your phone away or pick it up at the end of the day. So I think we're at an advantage if, being a small school, if we think about a system like that. So I think it's a good idea to explore it, certainly.
I can try to find what it was. I just,
We'll get our staff input about what's the best.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I want to get our students input too. Our kids are phenomenal, I have to say. I think most of our kids will comply. They're incredible young people, but they are teenagers and preteens. Their prefrontal cortexes that are not fully developed, so they will make mistakes. And these are learning experiences. So I have no doubt. If we had a high school, the discussion would be different. If we're talking about high school kids, it's a little bit of a different discussion. So I think we have the luxury of being small, Eric, as we said, also not having a high school on our campus. And we have incredible kids. So I have all the confidence in the world in our kids and our staff.
My last just thing to consider is we have the digital literacy class that is quarterly, I think, for middle school students. I just wonder if we can front load some kind of educational sessions with all of the middle schoolers and fifth graders or whatever at the beginning of the year, like an assembly or something that, like you said before, it's about education. Some of them are not bad, it's just how sometimes they're used that can be distracting.
And we can certainly do that.
I don't know, are we doing that class again?
We're required to.
Yeah. But I like your idea of an assembly to just get everybody and talk a little bit about the new expectation and, educate them a little bit so they all hear the message right up front early on.
I also want to emphasize the communication to the parents, because I think that was one of the downfalls of last year's policy, is making sure that everybody was on the same page, because there's going to need to be a partnership between the family, the teachers, and the kids, if this is going to work. I think it's part of your superintendent's coffee on the board.
It is, I'm sure, hopefully we'll have a raucous crowd. Talking about student cell phones.
it was in the newsletter, right? I mean, wasn't it? Wasn't it in the newsletter on cell phone?
Well,
The last newsletter?
Yeah, but I do have a.
You're so good reading.
You did some good reading,
Thank you for
not
reading.
everybody.
I will say, I do have a letter drafted based upon our discussion here about just this to parents. So I will send something out specifically before they get into school with this. I wanted to, get the will of the board, number one. Number two, have an open discussion in public. And if this is the direction that we decide to go as a district, and I do have a letter ready to go. I'm going to take some of the feedback I got here tonight, incorporate that in my letter, and definitely send it out to the parents just as they get their children ready for school, young people ready for school.
Thank you. I think that will help start us on the right foot as well. Do we have any other thoughts, comments, questions on cell phone before we move on? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments, but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. Okay. Now, once you're going to go ahead and close public comment and move on. We have another reason it shows up later in the evening. I'm going to move on to accepting the minutes. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the annual reorganizational meeting of July 11, 2024, The minutes of the regular business meeting of July 11, 2024 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments on the minute as presented? All in favor, please say aye. Nays? Abstentions? Moving on to financial reports. First, we have accept the claims audit report. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Preschool District does hereby accept the June 2024 claims audit report as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Preschool District approved the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Moving on to the personnel items. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Preschool District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Greg, I believe you, Joe, had a comment on item B.
Yeah, I'll start off, and I want to thank Joe for these recommendations. I'm learning very quickly that when you're a small district, you need to wear many hats. And today I was resetting people's wireless accounts earlier. So in that vein, we have, and I got to work with him this summer, Ernesto, and he is a fabulous custodian, cares very deeply about the school. So I'll let Joe describe why we're making this recommendation to the board, but I fully support it.
So we have a few job titles here in the labor class. We have some that are associated with bus driving, some that are associated with grounds work, and some that are associated with just cleaning. So Ernesto was hired here originally as a cleaner, which means that he has to work on duties that are specific to just that. So we want to expand his areas of influence and things that he do. He's very capable of doing other things, but it would not be entitled work if we left him in a cleaner position. So that's why we're recommending that we move him into this position. This is a nominal increase in pay, but also allows us to do more work with him.
Any questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Nays? Abstentions?
So Sarah, just before you want to do business items, can you pull out E, because I wanted to see.
Absolutely.
I know that.
Okay. I'm just going to rewrite it. Dusty, you're going to correct me if I mess this up.
So B through
B
D.
through D and F through K. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Preschool District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items B through D and F through K as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. And then we have a couple here. Joe, I don't know, because this is the tax levy meeting, if you want to talk about the tax levy.
I do. So the tax levy is something that we have to set in order for the county to print bills that get mailed out to all of the taxpayers. So we have to get your permission, and your permission is the tax warrant, which allows us to collect the taxes. It is, we had to do some last minute changes to it with some consultation with the county to make sure all of our numbers balance, and that's what is recommended tonight. There are 2 towns in our district, and they have equalization rates which change every year. Milltown is 33%, and we have a special rate for Putnam Valley this year, which applies to everyone that has a piece of Putnam Valley, which is 106%. So the levy that we have is our school tax levy as well as the library tax levy that we collect. So it's like $300,000 on behalf of the library, and we turn that over to them, and then the balance is our school tax levy, which was determined in the budgeting process.
Anyone have any questions for Joe on the tax levy? Okay. Greg, I'm gonna go to you for the Garrison Children's Education Fund grant award.
Yes. I want to thank GSEC again for their wonderful work on really providing grant opportunities for our teachers which impact our students. This particular grant, in the amount of $7,373.21, is going to do some wonderful things for our students. It's going to include our yoga program, supporting our yoga program for the first semester, the additional yoga mats that we need for that program. Also, transportation for our immigration trip to the Statue of Liberty, and that's a costly transportation when you take coach buses down there, as well as we're really looking at flexible seating, meaning that seating that can, some kids like to sit and work, some kids like to stand and work, some kids like to lay down on the floor and work, and it's all about the instructional purpose. And they are supporting some flexible seating for some of our special ed students that are general students in our consultant teacher program will benefit from. So, that's a hefty amount of money that they're donating. We're always so thankful for their partnership and their support of our district. So I just want to thank GSEC for this donation.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to Joe for H on forward, I believe, to talk about.
No, G. That's fine.
Yeah, we can talk about G.
I don't know if we need to, that's what I'm saying. You can skip it, you can skip it.
It's up to you.
I'm fine, I read it.
Okay. All right, so H through.
Basically, all the electric water heater and the emergency roof repair
Yes.
funds.
So there's a number of architectural contracts on the agenda tonight. The basis for these contracts was established by doing an RFP in the spring, buying a new architect. And then the way that RFP was written, the fee schedule is determined by how big the construction cost is going to be. That determines the percentage of what the fee is. And then we got a draft contract from the architect for the electric water heater project, and that was reviewed by legal, and then all the other contracts were made in the same form. So the electric water heater project is something that we got a grant from New York State to do here. But in order for us to access the grant funds, we have to follow all the rules that we would with a normal capital project, as well as get estimates and submit budgets to the state. They're involved with that project. So that will, when that's put in place, that will make it so that we don't have any fossil fuel equipment here at the school, with the exception of Bunsen burners and the stove that we don't really use much in the kitchen. That's electric water heater project. Then there is two items that have to do with an emergency repair that's needed on our roof on the 1908 section of the building. So the stone section of the building, there's one section of the roof that is flat. A few storms ago, we had a amount of wind that basically peeled the roof off, and it is it's temporarily secured at the moment. So there's two items on the agenda that are associated with that. One is the architect's agreement based upon what they believe the estimated cost to be. And then the declaration, the board declaring an emergency. The board is allowed to declare something an emergency if it is a threat to life, health, safety, or property. Okay? And this is a threat to safety and it's a threat to property. So we're asking the board to declare that an emergency. Once you do that, you can use undesignated fund balance. That is money that is sitting there that's not that's in your fund balance. It's not planned for anything else this year, and put it towards the project. And we can make the repairs that are needed. We still have to follow a process with SED. They're going to tell us what we have to do in order to do that. But in order for us to get that going, we have a budget established for it. That's included in the declaration, and we have an architect's agreement. We also did already submit a letter of intent to SED to tell them this, if we need a project number, we're going to do an emergency project. That's what it's for. And then the second, the other item that's on there is for the gym roof. As a part of the budget that we just had the public approve, we are replacing the gymnasium roof because it's at the end of this month. And we're going to be using contracts that are very similar to these and more budget work in the foreseeable future to pick off capital projects as we go based on what the facilities are.
Who's on the facility this year?
So Dan and Ed and but I don't believe they've started meeting yet,
No.
but the group is definitely.
Yes. And the storm that we had last Friday, exacerbated.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Joe on any of the contracts?
How long is it going to take to fix the emergency one?
Well, we don't know exactly. It depends on what kind of relief we can get from SED as far as the emergency component. The gym roof is probably going to be, at the earliest, would be next summer.
Do you have the architects provide a timeline of what they're estimating SED is looking at, or they have like?
Well, that is something that's updated every week on the website. I didn't check it before for this meeting, but I'm thinking it's going to be at least 25, 26 weeks before they would look at anything.
The emergency?
Well, the emergency one, maybe.
But they don't separate the funding, right?
No, they don't, and that's a discouraging thing, and it's also different than what it used to be, not even a year or so ago, so we're hoping for a little bit of relief there.
And in the budget, there was like the gym roof was going to be like 250 or something, but then we were hoping to get half back or something.
Yes.
From the state. Did
Yes.
that happen?
So that is in the works, and similarly to the project that is for the electric water heaters, the state is a different division of the state is going to require some different paperwork from us to be submitted, and they would reimburse us once the project is complete. That was approved as a part of the state budget, that there was going to be $125,000 as a grant for Garrison to do their roof. And that will
we do it. Whenever we do it, even if it's a year from now.
Yeah, that appears to be the case, yes.
Any other questions? Joe or Greg on the new business items? Go ahead and move to the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions. And now we're going to go back. Well, we really trust that we forget. So we took out E, is that correct? Okay. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves centralized services agreement with Actor Solutions effective August 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, as presented, and further authorizes the superintendent to execute said agreement. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have any questions or comments on the agreement as presented? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Now we're gonna look ahead in our program this evening. We are going back to public comment. I'm not gonna read my paragraph again. Still don't see anybody, so we're gonna go ahead and close public comment again. But I do hope people take the time to watch the meeting, maybe come to the September 4th one. Bring your comments, thoughts then. We're gonna go ahead and move on to board comments. Jocelyn?
No comment.
Eric?
Sure, a brief one. And sorry, I'll be a broken record on this one. I'll probably repeat this one when there's more members of the community here, but I just wanted to put it out there for anybody watching at home. And then also to fellow board members, to your friends in the community, I'd like to ask that a few more parents stick their hands up to volunteer for the PTA. You know, over the past few years, and especially coming out of COVID, the PTA really did an incredible job bringing back a lot of the programs and events that that people love, like International Night, Fall Fest, Book Sale, Deer Week. You know, all really fun events that the parents and the kids really look forward to each year. And I'm really concerned that those things won't happen this year without more parent involvement. The teachers also really count on the PTA, so it's a really great opportunity for parents to show their support for the teachers. You know, and it's easy. It's bringing food on special days. It's showing that we recognize the contribution they make to our kids' growth and development. And it's a really one of those really small tokens of appreciation that shows how much we support them and how grateful we are to them. And it's a really light lift, but it makes a really big impact. So, to members of the community who might be watching tonight, or watching on YouTube, if you're wondering what you can do or how you can make the school a better place than it already is, again, it's not a huge time commitment to keep these events alive and these demonstrations of gratitude going. And like I said, the impact is really felt by everyone, the teachers most of all. So if you're a parent who's felt the impact of the PTA and you know you have the capacity to help even just a little bit and keep some of those great events alive, you can email guspta@gmail.com and let them know that you're eager and willing.
But if I may, do you know if we have an executive committee that's volunteered yet, or are we still filling some?
I believe there are vacancies.
Yeah.
And I'll do it again.
People do watch at home, I'm convinced of it.
I watched them all before I signed up.
Thank you, Eric. Jennifer?
I just wanted to say to everyone that I'm excited about the start of the new year, and I wanted to publicly thank Dr. Stoll for the great updates to the board and the board updates. I really appreciated the thoroughness of them and the inclusion of photos.
Second that.
Great start on communication.
Sorry, maybe my next one won't have roofs in it, so.
I love the moves.
It has an audit committee meeting photos, and we'll keep it and hang on the wall.
Auditors are gonna think you're really going to snap pictures. Wonderful. Okay, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further comment this evening. Now we have, moving on to executive session. The Arizona Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing the school history of a student according to their FERPA rights, discussing the building emergency response plan, and discussing current litigation with school district council. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. We will adjourn without any further action being taken. Under an hour.
Whoa.
It sounds like it's-
You gotta clean this up.
Well, I will say,
I'm sorry, it's not.
we had a really good productive meeting. I did with Greg and Joe to go through the agenda